Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron. I hope you're having a great day or night in Jesus. We're going to do a video on why read the Bible in the King James Version. This comes from KJVtoday.net, KJVtoday.net. But now, I can't really pull it up like that. Maybe you can. I'm getting it off sites.google.com, sites.google.com. I think Brother Kilman showed me that some time back. But anyhow, I'm glad I'm even able to pull it up. So I'm going to read from this wonderful article, maybe a multi-part series, and then add some observations. Now, those of you that have watched the channel for a little while, you know over the many years we've been on YouTube, I've done several videos on this. And it's not just KJV was good enough for Paul, it's good enough for us. There's a lot of learned reasons, and people of extremely high academic learning come to the same conclusions, like the Harvard Literary Guide to the Bible, but among many others, Edward F. Hills and so many. So let's dive in. Why read the Bible in the King James Version? So again, I'm going to read KJVtoday.net and then make some comments. So for nearly 400 years, the King James Version remained unchallenged as the standard Protestant English Bible. And boy, that is true. When the ASV of 1901 came out, it kind of really fell flat on its face. Some people really still like that. And then, of course, the Revised Standard Version in the late 40s for one of the Testaments, early 1950s for both. It was done, it was communist front organizations, large degree, various fellow travelers. This was seen like the United Pentecostal Church rejected it immediately, put a position paper in. And I know some countries like Korea still used it, the RSV, and that's caused some tensions over the years. But anyhow, your comrade, the prophets, I'm still thinking about that, in Revelation. Newer translations did come out from 1611 to the mid-20th century, but none of these gained widespread acceptance among the English-speaking Protestant churches. There's been, on average, I think, well over one translation a year for the past 200 years, on average. Then, starting in the mid-20th century, new translations began to gain in popularity. The RSV, 1952, was the first serious contender against KJV. Then in the 1960s and 70s came the New American Standard, the Living Bible, the NIV, the New King James. I'll also mention the Amplified. Now, there were scores of others, but these were the major, Jerusalem Bible, New Jerusalem Bible, on and on. Many of those mid-20th century translations had lost their popularity by the 21st century. Some of the top contenders today by number of sales are the 2011 update to the NIV, the NIRV, I'll mention, the ESV, which is just an update of the RSV, as is the NRSV, which they've updated that as well. The NLT, with so many newer translations available, Christian Standard Bible is very popular too. I find it fascinating, you guys, when you're in your comments, you tell me, a lot of you really like the Holman Christian Standard Bible, and I don't think you can get that anymore. With so many newer translations available, many Christians think of the King James as an irrelevant relic from a bygone era. The arguments against King James sound logical. It's archaic. It was done by the king. Wasn't King James immoral? We've got a bunch more manuscripts today. We've got a lot better textual base. But over the years, I've done many videos on each of those subjects showing that's not true. That's kind of superficially true. It sounds good. It's kind of mountain peak theory of knowledge. Yeah, that sounds good. But when you dig down, it's like, that's not true. However, in the midst of this coming and going of new translations, the King James Version has withstood the test of time, continues to have a solid reader base. Now, I did want to say this, this is a psychological phenomenon. It's easier to deceive somebody than to convince them they've been deceived. Once they lock their mind in on the deception, it's almost impossible to move them. And that's what happens in this issue. Somebody will say, the newer translations, all of the aforementioned reasons why I use the new translations, easier to read, want to reach young people, better manuscripts, better knowledge is increased, on and so forth. You almost can't show them enough evidence that what they believe is wrong. Now, as far as the KJV continuing to have a solid reader base, that's really true. I did a video a few years ago, and I think was it Gallup or Pew, one of the two, that because I use like CBA statistics. I've done videos on top-selling Bibles, Bible translations from CBA, which is Christian Booksellers Association, which I was part of for a very long time, and for my younger years, and I really enjoyed it. I'll just tell you pros and cons of both, but we don't have time to go into all that. But one of the details of one of the later surveys was 51% of the people who read the Bible daily read the King James Version. So it shows you, even though some like CSB, NLT, ESV, Amplified may be extremely popular in sales, 51% of the people who use and read the Bible daily still read the King James. So there's a video somewhere on the channel on all that. I won't link it. I'm so sorry, I don't do links. And it's just me. This page describes the superb features of the King James Version. It's a technological thing more than anything. So, reasons to continue to read the King James. No demonstrable error. Books such as the King James Only Controversy, Can You Trust the Modern Translations by James White. I will tell you, back in 96, whenever it was, 98, reading that book, I'd been reading some pro-King James books. Said, well, I'm going to balance this out. Everybody said, read this James White book. Well, reading it, the scholarship was so beneath the level of your Dean Burgon's, your Hills books, True or False, David Otis Fuller, and all of these. I thought, well, it really convinced me the King James Version was right. And it's funny, a lot of times people, they'll say, have you read the King James? I'm like, yeah, it convinced me to be King James. You know, and I'm King James best. I don't really like the term King James only. I'm King James best for sure. But we won't go into all that and the differences, Textus Receptus and all this. Now, James White's an excellent debater. And so, but just because somebody wins the debate doesn't mean they're right. It means they're a great debater. It means they can marshal facts. They can present them better. It doesn't mean they're right. I saw, was it Daniel Dennett or somebody? I don't think it was him. Some guy at the University of Arizona that was in Australia debating one of my favorite Christian apologists, William Lane Craig. And I felt like he probably won the debate in the eyes of people, but Craig had all the facts. It's like Hitchens, a brilliant debater, was. But I see that a lot. So just because James White, it's like there was somebody, I think he wrote a book on the last 12 verses of Mark 16, 9 through 20. I forget his name. It's a great book. And I think that's who James White was debating. And so people kept saying, you've got to watch this. James White crushes the guy. So as I'm watching the debate, I'm like, this guy's crushing James White. What are these people talking about? And then I realized it's that old debate maxim that it's better to give 2, 3, or 4 instances in a debate. Because once you reach a certain threshold in a debate, when you give too much information, it actually begins to work against you. And people are just like, okay, too much information. They begin to reject it. And that's what was happening. This guy was just strafing with B-52s, allegorically, obviously. And James White would have 1 or 2 points. And also another thing James White does in these debates is he doesn't talk in broad generalities. He will bring up some, in my opinion, obscure specific, whether he's debating on this or the Trinity or something else. He'll say, but what about the pluperfect aorist tense in John 17:6? Or in Revelation 17:24 or something, that you would almost have to be a mega genius and have devoted your entire life to knowing specifics on one verse. And so he has devoted his specifics to that, maybe 3 or 4 verses that he'll throw that card out. Well, he's going to be better at that. He might have spent 2 weeks studying every Greek grammar in the world on this, every Greek manuscript that contains this. He's catching you flat-footed in the debate. And if you don't have the questions in advance, there's no way for you to know. And so then he's going to come across, obviously, more intelligent. And so it doesn't mean I don't respect James White. I really like reading him on the end times. I've really appreciated that. Just long story. So, so doctrine. Here's another reason. There's no demonstrable error, and I would say that's true. Let's keep reading here. And then the King James Version debate, A Plea for Realism by D.A. Carson. I remember when that came out too, got that. It really didn't add anything to it. There was some, I tell you, the ones that kind of came closest to convincing me was a couple by Bob Jones University Press. So they point to alleged translation and textual errors in the KJV, while the stated goal of these types of books is to refute KJV onlyism, the idea that Christians should only use the KJV. These authors often go too far by alleging errors in the KJV when there isn't any. James R. White was a consultant for the New American Standard Bible, and D.A. Carson was a translator for the NLT. While these men and others may have different opinions on translation or textual choices, every reading in the KJV can be justified by reasonable alternative theories. This website refutes over 150 allegations of errors to show the KJV is demonstrably inerrant. And I do like D.A. Waite and David Cloud kind of take that tact. They said what they mean when they say, like, if the KJV is a perfect Bible, is that every translation is an allowable translation. Even the King James translators, because they had, over 6,000 instances in the Old Testament alone, where they would do like alternate translations and things. I think 31 of those were Kier and Ketiv, of 292 instances or so of Kier and Ketiv, that which is spoken, that which is read, from Hebrew, that they knew there were alternate translations in some difficult points. And they talk about this in Translators to the Reader. And so it's just that every translation is a reliable translation. Now, the KJV is also a fuller, doctrinally superior text, but I tell you what, we're going to make that a separate video. So thanks for being here. Watch our other videos on a variety of different topics that are germane to the Christian life and difficult passages explained, historical evidence, archaeology. Join us on Biblical Archaeology today. Hopefully we're still on podcast because they're making it more difficult for me to podcast, and I'm terribly technologically illiterate. So God bless. We love you. See you later. Bye.